You are listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and this week we're joined by another member of the themed entertainment industry as part of our off-season interview series. Recently, I had the opportunity to connect with Zane Jensch, a 20-year veteran of the themed entertainment world and co-creator and co-host of the D&D-Ticket podcast. The purpose of the interview was to talk all about D&D-Ticket, which, if you like our podcast, I highly recommend checking theirs out as well. For more information on the D&D-Ticket podcast, text the letters D-N-D to 419-742-2101 to read our article and interview with Zane. That said, the conversation with Zane was so good, we decided to make it its own podcast episode. We explore Zane's history in themed entertainment and get into the details of what makes the D&D Ticket podcast a must-listen. So without further ado, here's my conversation with themed entertainment veteran Zane Jensch. Zane, let's start with your background. I mean, obviously you come from a background in themed entertainment. Kind of what's your story as it relates to the themed entertainment industry?
Sure. So for the past 20 years, I've been a creative in themed entertainment. The start of my career was at Universal Creative, right when they moved the studio from Hollywood to Orlando. I was really fortunate that I had some very supportive folks who kind of, left the back door open, and I got in, and they were incredibly patient mentors as I was trying to figure out the industry, as I went along. And then for, now 2 decades this year, I've been, traveling the earth as a creative director, working on ride shows, attractions, resorts, museum exhibits, traveling exhibits, World Expo pavilions, anything you can put a guest experience to. I've been incredibly fortunate to collaborate with the most amazing artists and technicians and operators and production personnel, and have gotten to go, to all corners of the planet and just be a part of really exciting projects with truly amazing artists.
Perfect. And just to kind of, I don't want to necessarily put a name to some of the work you've done, but attractions, rides, things that you've worked on that people might know that I could kind of lend to your name.
Sure. No, when I was, first working at Universal, when I was a child, I was a very small part of working on things like Shrek 4D and Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast and Revenge of the Mummy, and a lot of stuff that was just coming up out of the ground at Universal Japan, because the park was just opening. It was doing gangbusters, and they were like, "Oh goodness, let's add all of this program to the park very quickly." And so I got to be a part of those when I was just starting out, and that was amazing. That was an amazing experience to be a part of so many things that were all going to get to the field. They were all going to get built. So I really got an incredible viewpoint from right at the beginning of my career. When I could contribute basically nothing helpful. I got to see a lot of incredible projects come to life, and that was a tremendous experience. And then over the years, I've gotten to work with seemingly every independent design studio, Thinkwell, BRC, Phil Hedema, Maiko2, and I have gotten to work on projects for every kind of possible IP holder. The greatest amount of my time has been creating attractions for Nickelodeon. So for a number of years, I worked on everything from theme park attractions to exhibits to lands we built in parks to resorts, new hotels. And so favorites from that time would be SpongeBob Subpants Adventure, which was a really wild attraction we got to build in Galveston at Moody Gardens there. It was a 5-screen 3D choose your own adventure attraction where guests played a really prominent role in creating the narrative of the experience with a live vector of Patrick Starr and a bunch of really insane in-theater effects, like a big cannon that shoots a beach ball and just crazy stuff, which was a lot of fun. I'm super proud of the work that the team was able to do on project at the Amazeum in Bentonville, Arkansas. The Nickelodeon Play Lab there is an exhibit about collaborative creativity And we had a real little team, but we all, I'm thrilled and very proud of the work we were able to do there. So those are some favorites.
Gotcha.
Those are ones I just love. Yeah, so I've gotten to be all over and see kind of every possible version of a project, from quick fast burn things to I'm just coming off of working for Universal again on the Epic Universe project. So much bigger teams and longer schedules and that. So I've been super lucky to have such amazing collaborations.
That's awesome. Yeah, just kind of as a sidebar, unrelated to anything, I just had Patrick Kling. Interviewed him for our podcast, and we somehow the discussion came up with the Nickelodeon Universe and American Dream, and how somehow this, between he and you, there managed to be a homage to the log by Blammo at the American Dream. And then it was Andy Garfield said that you and Patrick would have paid for that log with your own money if it had to be, just to get it in the space there. So that's hilarious. It's still hilarious to me that in the year 2019 we're going to get a Ren and Stimpy reference in a Nickelodeon.
No, I'm thrilled that tickled you. It seems to have made a lot of guests happy. If I'm going by kind of the photographs that show up online, everybody loves getting their picture with the captain's log. No, that was one of the things that I discovered and kind of pushed for in my time at Nickelodeon, was that it's a network for kids. However, that's what works for broadcast. What the reality of creating immersive spaces based around Nickelodeon means that parents, teenagers, folks in their early 20s, little itty bitty kids, everybody expects the Nickelodeon they know and love. You can't tell them they're wrong. Like, oh, you're not, but that show that was so important to you, Legends of the Hidden Temple or Ren and Stimpy, things that were giant parts of that brand, you can't tell a guest they're wrong to come in expecting that. And so it's very difficult to help executives understand that, what works for you need to promote and support what the network is today. But in the immersive space, we have to cast a much wider net. And it's okay if itty bitties have never run across Legends of the Hidden Temple before, they've never seen reruns or anything. That's absolutely fine. If the first time you encounter this story world is in a water park that's affiliated with a hotel, or in the park up at American Dream, that's absolutely fine. That's great. If you have a positive experience with it, Spiffy, it doesn't matter that you didn't watch the show every day after school like I did, and lots of folks, because it's amazing when you go out in the world and you're working on these things. People tell you their opinions about their favorite stories, their favorite characters, their favorite, universes of storytelling, really quickly. No one has soft opinions about this. And so when people would find out I was working for Nickelodeon, they would immediately start talking about, where can I get a Krabby Patty? I want to be slimed. My favorite, show is Legend of the Hidden Temple. Those were the three I heard. If it was a drinking game, I'd be dead.
Oh gosh.
I heard them so often. And so you can't tell guests yeah, but that doesn't fit with this current fiscal quarter. They're really putting a big emphasis behind Paw Patrol. It's yeah, we have to do what's right for all of our guests. So we have to do great stuff for Paw Patrol and Shimmer and Shine and new stories that are currently on air. But we also have to mine the stuff that frankly just makes a great experience. Right. It's super okay that you've never encountered Invader Zim on TV. It was on TV really briefly. That's totally fine. But these characters are hysterical, and they just are crying out to be part of themed entertainment. So that was always a real tough negotiation, because, and I understand it, they're, in TV, their background is in what's working today, this week, what is on broadcast right now. They're learning to understand the streaming world slowly but surely, and how that works. But yeah, no, it's always tough to say, I know this has been off the air for 30 years, but it's still going to make an incredible attraction. And it's okay if the first time you experience it is when you've paid a ticket for an attraction.
Love it. Okay. Now that I'm off my personal sidebars here, let's talk D&D-Ticket. Obviously, was it a project that was kind of brought about by the pandemic and having some additional free time? Coming from somebody who started a podcast in the middle of the pandemic, if that's the case, I feel you.
No, it was like, so just by way of, for folks who may not have run across it before, the D&D-Ticket is a game night for themed entertainment creatives. So 4 to 6 usually boozy entertainment design experts and one special guest creative will get together and we'll play a Dungeons and Dragons type role-playing game. The game is inspired by the circus of absurdities, the creative problem solving, the international intrigue, the sketchy clients, the insane production hurdles, all of which collide in the entertainment design business. And its origins were exactly as you suspected. We're out of quarantine. As a creative community, we were all looking after each other really well when everybody had to radically change our lives as everything was starting to happen last year. But we were just kind of checking on each other for like the really important life critical stuff. Like, are you and your family okay? Do you have everything you need?
Right.
Does everybody have food and shelter? Everybody good? So we lost out of the creative community silliness, play. We lost going to the bar after work and talking about an attraction we would never build. And just having that playtime on and being absolutely ridiculous with one another. And so concurrent to that, my buddy Ken Plume, who's an author, podcaster, seemingly is like the epicenter of pop culture. I don't know how it happens, but Ken is just this magical, font of all of pop culture seems to like intersect at Ken Plume. So I've known Ken for a dozen plus years now. And whenever we would talk about, my job, like I can't ever obviously talk about because of NDAs, what's going on in the job. Right. So I'm always trying to like explain like the process, and invariably would come to like, D&D metaphor. It's like, well, here's what's going on in this campaign and what's going on right now with like this particular bridge troll. And we've got a paladin that's stuck at customs, and I'm trying to like artfully explain the nuances of it.
You're trying to disclose without
those
disclosing.
2 things happening. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, this is why I'm really stressed out, and this is why I'm, sitting in an airport lounge in Singapore right now. Or whatever the situation of catching up with Ken would be. So kind of those 2 parallel things just collided really wonderfully and said like, let's create calendar events. Let's put it on the calendar and dedicate this time where we're going to put together all of my favorite creative people, and we're just going to play. We're just going to be silly. We're going to record it so that we don't tumble off the cliff of talking about, the actual hardships and terrible things that are happening in all of our lives. We're going to just dedicate and say that this, hour or 2 every couple of weeks is just for us to be playful. And I thought it was just going to be for us, for my immediate group of collaborators and friends who that we've all missed each other so much. But I've been really pleasantly surprised that like, oh my stars, I get, messages on LinkedIn, people contact all the time that are design students and things saying like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Is this what the industry is really like? No, but that's why we have this time. That's why we do this, is so that we get to preserve this part of play that's really important to the creative process that really is very separate from our jobs.
Got it. And did you have a personal background like growing up playing Dungeons and Dragons, or is it just the way the podcast kind of took shape?
Very, very minimally, like played every now and then, just like with a cousin who was in town, but was something, I found like, as an adult that how much I loved the storytelling and how much I loved it involved the creativity of everybody who played. And it also, just gives you such a great kind of light structure to an evening so that you can, or depending on your DM, a lot of structure to your evening, so that you could just kind of be a Christmas tree for a lot of people's creativity to hang on it. Like it's a lot of fun. So, and I will say our version of D&D for the show it's the cocktail party version of D&D. Right. It is the lightest possible of structure. It's a D&D campaign. Like It's a Small World is the UN. It is not very complex. It's like whose line is it anyway? The score's made up, the points don't matter. Thinnest of structures on which we just get to like put brilliant people together in a room. Like anytime you get to put Bonnie Hallman and Devin Flanagan and Vic Lugo and Dan Picard in a room together, it's like you cannot have more fun in an evening. So what a great excuse for that.
I love it. And I mean, it definitely comes through. I'm not quite all the way through the episodes. I mean, I feel like with the rest of the world, like my commuting time has dwindled a lot. So I'm not listening to as many podcasts. I'm like halfway through episode 4 at this point. And it's just the absurdities of like, yeah, you're going to make an e-ticket attraction based on Clue or planes, trains, and automobiles. You're going to have this entire land based on that. I mean, I guess inside baseball here, do the creatives know ahead of time the movie they're going to see, or does it completely come up on the fly and you just have to assume that somebody has seen that movie?
That's a great question. So we have a big, long list of intellectual properties that was put together by Ken, by me. We invite, folks who are coming on the show to like, hey, throw in some of your favorites. We're hoping to get Amir back on the show, Amir Montgomery, who's also a brilliant, brilliant designer, because he added like 20 great properties to the list. It's like, oh my gosh, we have to do all of these. So there's a big, big, long list of like, I don't know, I think 150 or 200 IPs,
oh, wow.
TV shows, everything. And we'll send those out to the folks who are going to be part of each game. Mm-hmm. And hey, fill in the blank with, I know this a bunch, I know this a little, I've never heard of this. And there's a bunch on the properties that like I've never heard of. I've never gotten through. Things like Stephen King has written like 12 trillion books. I haven't gotten through all of them yet. So we've got things on the list that I haven't cracked yet. And so those lists go straight to Ken, and then Ken looks for where the Venn diagram happens. It's like, oh, amongst these 5 folks who are going to be part of this particular week, I think these 3 or 4 might be good candidates. And then sometimes Ken will just do his own thing, and we'll bring in something that nobody has entertained before, and it's great, and it's always fun, right? It's like there's no wrong way to do it, because it's right. The fun of the party game is not entirely dissimilar from our jobs. When someone will run in the door and say like, you have 40 minutes to come up with an attraction for Agent Cody Banks 2. And you can't in that moment go, it's like, well, I got to go rent Agent Cody Banks 2. I'm not super up on the mythology. So you're sitting in the charrette just trying to frantically read the Wikipedia page. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, my favorite scene is citation needed. You're just trying to do all of it on the fly. Yeah. So, yeah, the more kind of madcap the episodes seem, I will tell you it is much closer to the reality of themed entertainment.
Okay. And then, when the dice is rolled, is that an arbitrary, like what you're going to happen? Or is there like an actual science? Like if you roll a 1 to a 3, you're going to have a family ride. If you roll a 4 to a 7, you're going to have a land. Is there an actual science behind that? Or is that a kind of a made up on the fly as it goes?
There is a giant D&D-Ticket manual that I wrote and that Ken added to and adapted, changed. I don't know what all he's done to it, but there's a big honkin' manual that I wrote at the outset of this. Very much like we're playing D&D. There's a book, and then we add to it and subtract things. And I think if we do another motion-based simulator, I think we're all going to scream. So things get pulled away from that. And then Ken has his charts and his book, and he kind of runs the games as he would a true DM, with all whimsical malice towards players as a good DM will.
Oh my gosh! So I again, just listening to this, there's so much like not science, but science. You know what I mean? That kind of goes into it. It's just like you wrote an actual manual. There's a list of 150 topics. I mean, you guys could, in theory, could go on for a while, which is great.
Yeah, no, it's certainly something we can, expand, add to, as much as, we have, interest, and as much as, everybody keeps reacting how much they want to play, they want to come back and play again. We're all having so much fun doing this. It is, succeeded beyond my wildest dreams that we could kind of pull together all my favorite people and we could just have this really ridiculous playtime. that we'll go as long as everybody has bandwidth to do it, and interest in playing. So yeah, it is been the greatest of kind of surprises and joys that we have such a demand to like, I want to come back and play again. I want to do this. Like, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. So I think that's all indicating to me that as a design community, we've all really missed this kind of playtime. It is the best parts of my week.
That's awesome.
Whenever we have a game.
And then also with the panel, you guys kind of bring in a wild card of sorts. That's not somebody who's in the themed entertainment industry, and it's people in entertainment, people who kind of provide some comic relief from time to time. What's the story behind them? Is it just a kind of a special guest that you're kind of familiar with, who other people may or may not know, who will add to it and kind of has that creative side, but isn't necessarily a creative designer?
Yeah, no, it's it is born actually very truly out of the process of like a great charrette when you're starting out at the beginning of a project. And this was a process I learned at Thinkwell really early on in my career. They were always incredibly, gifted at putting together the room of like, well, here is the design and technical team who's going to be the owners of this project for this phase. So they need to be here. And then there are the, great consultants that you reach out and it's like, oh, here's a great magic consultant. Here's somebody who knows everything about this particular new type of architecture that we're trying to deal with, so they bring in kind of extensions. And then, a ring further out from that, it would often have, folks who were just, related to, maybe the subject we're tackling in the design charrette, or they maybe are just out of left field, big brain thinkers. And they would come in, and the mix of the room and getting all of the kind of great ideas flowing, is really about kind of casting a really, wild, diverse set of players into the room to get the best ideas. And so when Ken and I were setting up the game, we said like, well, we should have that same kind of idea. It's like, this is a game night that's for my closest collaborators, but I also really want that sense of like getting wild new ideas in the room, and Ken, being the epicenter of the pop cultural universe, has the most amazing contact list. Ken has the greatest crazy group friend network I've ever encountered. If you ever get a phone call from Ken Plume in the dead of night, and he says like, hey, we're at this bar, are you up? Can you come by? Say yes. Throw on pants. Doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter what's happening. You go find out, because it is always the most fascinating and incredible people he puts together in the room. And it's like every time, I've gotten one of those wild, like, oh, where we're going to be having dinner. And it's like, don't ask who's going to be there or what's going to happen. It's always the most incredible creative minds and hysterical people and wonderful performers. And, Ken puts together a great room. Like whenever we go, out back when dinner was an outside thing, Ken would always put together the most amazing evenings of people. And so I leave that up to Ken. Like I just find great, wonderful people. So, he brings in like Molly Lewis, who is hysterical and a brilliant composer, an amazing performer, and she's great. And then Ken will bring in, amazing voiceover talents like Hal Lublin, and we just get these great hysterical creative thinkers who are just a big fun part of our game. And so it's always a terrific surprise whoever Ken kind of brings to the table. Got it.
And so I've got to address the executive child in the room, Daxel. and obviously there's the stories of and Breck Eisner is one that comes to mind. How did the character Daxel, I'm assuming this is, again, I'm 3 episodes in at this point. How did the character Daxel come about? And every episode, it seems like he has a bigger and bigger backstory. He's got his literary degree. He's got a drug addiction. Whatever the issue is. Let's talk about Daxel.
Oh, Daxel. So it's hysterical. And honestly, another great way to illustrate the collaborative creative process. So when Ken and I were kind of dreaming up like, hey, let's put together this game night, and we were writing the book of like, here are the challenges, here are the things that are going to go into this. We just had kind of like intrusive executive moments kind of built into the game. Bonnie Holman, the brilliant creative director, outstanding writer for Myco 2, she christened this unnamed executive Daxel and gave him this origin story as the coked up son of the CEO, which was something she improvised in the room. And we have just built on this for every one of the shows. Daxel comes back and haunts our process. Daxel is emblematic of anyone in the process whose personal whims steamroll the work of teams of experts. So Daxel is definitely not any particular. I want to be very clear. Daxel is not a commentary on any single person. But Daxel is, he's the notes you hear from executives and clients all the time. I hate trees. I hate hexagons. I don't think this is about speed. I think it's about cringy warehouse parties and a slow-moving bus. Just picking theoretical examples. That's all. Just
of course.
Hypothetical. Daxel is, they hire experts and they micromanage them and refuse to listen to other ideas. He's become our all-purpose avatar for dismissive, cynical, bad faith critique. But he has certainly taken on a life of his own, and all of that got started with Bonnie Holman improvising his name and calling him the coked up son of the CEO. Now I feel like as I'm explaining Daxel, it's like that scene of the Three Amigos when Steve Martin is explaining, like, in a way, all of us has an El Guapo to face. For some of us, shyness is our El Guapo. For others, a lack of education may be El Guapo. For us, El Guapo is a big, dangerous man who wants to kill us. No, it's Daxel. is our avatar for the bad faith leadership. It's a lot of fun to hear anytime one of the other players will bring up Daxel and sort of add to his backstory. He's had a hell of a ride here for a young executive.
He really has. And I know, are the records basically on like a kind of a when everyone's available basis? I've noticed in the podcast feed, it's not like you release shows every Monday or Tuesday. It's kind of a when you feel like it basis. Is it basically around that, and kind of what goes into the production process or the post-production process?
Sure. We're trying to get a cadence of a record every other week and then alternating that a release of an episode. Doesn't obviously work out because unsurprisingly, pulling together a room of creative folks, even with everyone dealing with what we're all dealing with in quarantine, everybody is all working like crazy. Everyone is dealing with all the whimsies of home life through such unprecedented times. So it's important that we be sensitive to like everybody's dance cards in all this, but everybody is just it seems like such a break for everybody. Everybody's so relieved when we get a chance to do it that it's really lovely to see folks carve out time to devote to something so silly. So it tells me that it's probably something that they've all been needing.
Love it. And as the world kind of edges its way back to what I'm going to call normal, I don't think normal is ever going to really exist in the way it was. Are there plans to continue?
The biggest air quotes possible around normal. No, absolutely. We want to continue it just as much as everybody has time and interest in playing, because even as things are, as you said, like definitely there's been an uptick in everybody's project work since January 20th. I don't know why. It's suddenly everyone has hope again. There's definitely been dance cards have gotten busier, but there's no shortage of amazing collaborators that I've been so lucky to say, like, when are we playing again? So the goal is to keep going as long as everybody has bandwidth, because even when you're deeply entrenched and busy in a project, it seems like folks still really need a creative release. They need that valve to open up and to just be playful, because that's what this was all born out of. We were all in the heat of projects for Dubai or for I was coming back from a project in South Korea that was incredibly fast burn, and we all just kind of got into the routine of every day at the end of the project, going out to the great local chicken and beer place across from our hotel in Seoul in South Korea, and just riffing and talking about things we would never ever build. So that I don't think there's any shortage of need for that, whether we're in the midst of projects or in this weird house arrest thing.
Again, I'm not quite into the back catalog here. I want to get your personal take here. If there is an IP, and I mean, it doesn't have to be built. What is your dream IP to put any park anywhere in the world, and base an attraction land or otherwise around?
Okay, then can I ask you for further design criteria? Does this have to be an attraction that I expect anybody to go on? It's like, are we into like, hey, this is purely personal taste, like this would be an incredibly bad business decision, or it's like, hey, what's something you've never gotten to build that you think a guest other than you would actually like to go on?
Okay, I'm going to roll my dice here, and it's my 20-sided dice. One of each.
Okay. I think if I had to design and build an attraction with no parameters, with our game whimsy parameters on this, anywhere in the world that would be for other people to enjoy other than me, it would be The Iron Giant. It is one of my absolute favorite movies, one of my absolute favorite stories. I know that that beautiful kind of mid-century animated world that Brad Bird and his team created would make an incredible place, would make an incredible ride. The giant himself is obviously an amazing character, but good news, he's also a vehicle. He's so big, he's also an environment. There aren't a lot of stories out there where you've got the lead character, the title character is also, he's a scenic environment and he's also the car. So that just is crying out for, that could be an amazing experience. And I think that's something that like guests would love. I think you could make something that people would connect with. Marketing challenges aside, I think you could make something really amazing out of that. And then if we're doing something that like, oh my gosh, what is one that only I would care about? I'm tempted to go with things like some of my favorite theatrical pieces like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, or something that would be like, that would only be for me and two other performance artists, I imagine, somewhere in the world. But actually I would probably have to go with Joe versus the Volcano, which is a drastically underappreciated, wonderful fairy tale film made by John Patrick Shanley, was the writer-director on that, who later went on to, I think he won the Pulitzer for Doubt. He's this incredible playwright, and he made this really fanciful fairy tale movie for Amblin in, I think, 89 or 90. And it is just a world that is crying out to be in themed entertainment too. Joe's factory world that he lives in is so bizarre and stylized. You have that great sea voyage as a ride vehicle, the luggage, everything I'm describing right now for the millions upon millions of people who've never, well, mathematically, billions of people who've never seen Joe versus the Volcano. Sounds crazy, but I promise you, it is a wonderful, bizarre, whimsical little movie. And the island of Waponiwu, if that's not crying out to be, a water ride, I don't know what is. So yeah, that would be my theme park project that would be for literally no one but me.
Well, for me, I mean, like, I have this weird fascination with the movie Heavyweights, the Disney movie from like 1994. Yeah. I think the Apache Relay deserves its own ride, but that's neither here nor there. But last question I've got: if people are trying to find
Ben Stiller in that,
he was. That was like, it was Ben Stiller. It was like pre-Dodgeball Ben Stiller, so it was pre-White Goodman, Tony Perkis. Yeah, it was. It's a good one.
I got to revisit that one. I think I haven't seen that one probably since junior high. So
okay, we got to add it to the 150 IP list.
We'll put it on the list. Absolutely.
But if people are trying to find the podcast, where is the best place to look?
There's two spots to listen to the podcast right now. One is the address would be, it's one of those bit.ly addresses, bit.ly/D&D-Ticket. And is spelled out A-N-D, D&D-Ticket. Or you can listen to us on the Apple Podcasts. And just a shorthand address for that one is bit.ly/D&D-Ticket iTunes. So those are the two spots to listen to us right now. That is all off in Mr. Plume's world, where mercifully I do not have to figure out the tech on getting a podcast up.
Perfect. And social media, you guys are at D&D-Ticket on Twitter and Instagram, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll always let folks know when we've got an episode coming up, and we try to put silly things on there whenever we can.
Perfect. Like I said, I love what you guys are doing, and I want more people to listen, and it's kind of meta for a podcaster to interview a podcaster about a podcast, but I'm digging it. When we interviewed Dave Cobb, Dave just had nothing but really good things to say about the podcast. He's like, you guys got to check this out. And I was like, done. Dave Cobb wants me to do it. I'm going to do it.
That's so sweet. No, thank you so much for all the kind words and for the support and a lovely conversation this morning. Dave is such a sweetheart. I first met and started bothering Dave when Men in Black was finishing up. I was a high school student at Dr. Phillips. Right behind the park, and would walk over every day after school, sometimes during, and would kind of haunt the attraction, waiting for it to go into soft opening. And Dave was so sweet and was would answer just a bazillion questions. And so I've known Dave for many years, and it's been lovely to hear how much fun he had when he did our show, and how supportive he's been. So we always appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, Zane, I really appreciate it. That's going to do it for this episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. Thanks again to Zane for his time, and you can check out the D&D Ticket podcast at bit.ly/D&D-Ticket. If you want to check out our website, we are Coaster101.com, and we are at Coaster101 on all of the social channels. If you've got any fan mail, questions, concerns, hate mail, anything really to send us, feel free to send us an email at podcast@Coaster101.com. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing, and doing all of those really good things that help listeners find us. We really appreciate it. As always, thank you to Justin Mabry of JM Music Design for his work on our theme song. That'll do it for this week. We will talk to y'all again soon. See ya.